name is Leda Quinn, 24 years old. When people picture still living at home, they usually imagine laziness, a lack of ambition, or someone clinging to comfort. For me, it wasn't like that. I had a stable job at an insurance company, enough to afford my own one-bedroom somewhere across town. But our family house was warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and filled with echoes of years that hadn't yet been ruined by resentment. And if I'm being brutally honest, staying let me save money for a future I wasn't sure I wanted. My younger sister, Christina, didn't understand savings, didn't understand patience. At 20, she was halfway through college and lived in a trendy apartment one town over. She only came back during holidays, breezing in with stories about professors who adored her and friends who thought she was hilarious. Everything she needed, rent, tuition, spending money, was wired to her without question. That wasn't how it was when I was in school. I worked bookstore nights and diner weekends, grabbing coffee refills at midnight just to keep from dozing on the job. Mom and Dad covered 30% of my tuition. The rest was scholarships and my own exhausted back. It hardened me. It made me respect every dollar I touched. Christina never got that lesson, and I think Mom's soft spot for her made sure she never would. This year, though, even softness ran into steel walls. Dad's slipped disc had kept him out of his construction supervisor job for weeks, and Mom's hours at the law firm were cut back. Bills piled like snowdrifts on the counter. One night, I overheard them whispering in the kitchen. Christina's tuition bill, due in 3 months, and no money to cover it. "We'll figure something out," Mom whispered, but her voice cracked. That something became the country house. Our family's riverside place was more dust than comfort now, with fishing boats no one used, furniture sagging with mildew, and boxes of tools Dad hadn't touched in years. One Saturday, they drove out there and came back with eyes red from sorting through decades of belongings. The boat went for $3,000 to our neighbor, Mr. Peterson. The dining room set, $800. Dad's collection of tools, $1,200. Piece by piece, they sold memories just to carve out Christina's future. By the end of 2 months, the total was $15,000, stacked in bills, 20s, 50s, hundreds, in an envelope that felt too heavy for its paper skin. One Tuesday morning, Dad set it on the kitchen table. He rubbed his forehead, the way he always did when bracing for a fight with himself. "Leda," he said, voice gravelly, "I need you to take this to the bank. All of it. Deposit it into the family account." The envelope sat between us like a live wire. "Dad, that's a lot of money to carry around." "I'd do it myself, but I've got back-to-back meetings. Your mom's buried under a client presentation. You're the only one who can get to the bank." I looked at the clock. I was already cutting it close for work. "The bank doesn't even open until after I'm at the office. I can't today, but tomorrow's my day off. I'll go first thing in the morning." His eyes searched mine for a second too long, then he nodded. "Fine, just keep it safe." I carried the envelope upstairs, every creak of the staircase like a warning bell. My room looked suddenly flimsy, too easy to invade. Dresser drawers felt obvious. Under the bed felt childish. I settled on the top drawer of my desk, sliding the envelope beneath old college notebooks, syllabi, and graded essays. A graveyard of words to guard paper treasure. At work, I couldn't focus. I kept picturing the drawer, the thin layer of protection over $15,000. By the time I got home that evening, my nerves buzzed like static, and then I froze in the doorway. Christina was in the living room, parading like a model on an invisible runway. She wore designer jeans that fit like they'd been sculpted to her, a cream sweater with a brand tag I recognized from glossy magazines, boots that cost more than a week of my pay. In her hand, she twirled a brand new phone, the kind you had to pre-order months in advance. "Christina," I dropped my work bag with a thud. "When did you get here, and where did you get all that stuff?" She grinned, tossing her hair like the question was a joke. "Surprise. Did you miss me?" "That's not an answer." My stomach tightened. "Did you get a job?" Her laugh was sharp, dismissive. "Me? Work? Leda, please, that's your thing." "Then how—" I stopped. The bad feelings slithered up my spine. "How did you pay for all this?" "Oh, you know." She raised the phone like a trophy. "I borrowed from a secret stash. Found myself a little treasure chest." I didn't breathe. I didn't move. Then I sprinted upstairs, my heart hammering. I yanked open the desk drawer. Papers flew like startled birds. The notebooks shifted. But the envelope, gone. The drawer gaped empty. My hands shook as I shoved everything around, praying it had slipped behind. Nothing. Just scraps of my past life. Downstairs, Christina was snapping selfies, angling the phone to catch the best light. "Christina," my voice cracked. She looked up, irritation flashing before she masked it. "What is your problem?" "You took it, the envelope. $15,000. Her smirk was slow, cruel. "If money's lying around in this house, doesn't that make it family money? And I'm family, so, yes, I used it." I couldn't even form the words. Her phone rang. She answered in a syrupy tone I'd never heard from her. "Yeah, baby. Did you get it? I sent you $10,000 today, just like I promised." I know. You needed it for the debts. Don't worry about paying me back right away. Just take care of what you need." The bottom fell out of my stomach. 10,000. She'd given 10,000 of our parents' sacrifice to someone else. I lunged and snatched the phone from her hand, hanging up mid-sentence. "What did you do?" Her eyes narrowed. "Relax. It's just money." "Just money? That was everything Mom and Dad sold, everything they worked for. Do you even understand?" The front door opened. Mom and Dad stepped in, the air of long days clinging to them. Dad set down his briefcase, Mom her tote bag. They froze, sensing the static in the room. "What's going on here?" Dad asked, voice low. I pointed at Christina, at the designer bag stacked on the couch. "She took the money, the envelope. She spent it." Mom's face drained white. "Leda, don't joke about that." "I'm not joking. Look at her. Look at what she bought. And I heard her on the phone. She sent 10,000 to someone else." Christina's bravado faltered. "Whose money was it anyway?" she muttered, quieter. Dad's face darkened, red rising from his collar. "Christina, that was the money for your tuition. That was everything. We sold the boat, the furniture, my tools, months of work." Christina's mask cracked, her lips parted. For the first time, she looked scared. And in that silence, something told me this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about every choice, every excuse, every line our family had blurred until it finally snapped. Christina's fear flickered only for a second before she snapped her mask back on. Her chin lifted, eyes sharp with defiance. "You're all insane," she spat. "Leda's lying. She probably spent it herself, and now she's trying to dump the blame on me." The words landed like daggers. I gasped, but Mom's expression wavered, her protective instinct for Christina clashing with the evidence in front of her. "Christina?" Mom's voice trembled. Don't say things like that. Not when your sister is..." "Not when she's what?" Christina cut in, her voice rising. "You've always taken her side. Maybe she blew the money and now she's staging this whole show to make me look guilty." "Enough!" Dad's shout rattled the walls. His fists slammed against the table, the sound like thunder. "Do you think we're fools? Do you think we can't see the clothes on your back, the phone in your hand? Do you think we don't know the weight of what you've done?" Christina flinched but pressed on, eyes wet now, weaponizing her tears. "I didn't do anything. She's framing me." I couldn't breathe. My throat burned with fury. "Dad, she's lying straight to your face. I heard her on the phone. She said she sent 10,000 to someone. She said it like it was nothing." Dad turned to Christina, voice low and shaking. "Is that true?" Her silence was an answer. Then, like a child cornered, she screamed, "Fine, I sent it. I sent it to Derek. He needed it. He was in trouble and people were after him. I had to help him." The room tilted. The name clanged in my ears. Derek. I'd seen his face only once, scrolling through Christina's Instagram feed, his arm looped around her shoulders, smug, cocky smile, like he'd never worked for anything in his life. "You gave him our family's money?" Dad's voice cracked on the word "our." "He promised he'd pay it back," Christina insisted, wiping her tears with shaking hands. "Someday." "Someday?" Mom's tone was brittle. "We needed that money for your tuition, for your future, and you..." She pressed her hands over her mouth as if words could break her own daughter further. "I didn't spend it all on him," Christina shouted desperately. I bought some things. For me. For my friends. We went out last night. It was just... I wanted to feel normal, okay? To not think about all the pressure." Her admission fell like ash. Dad's eyes glistened. He sat down heavily, shoulders slumped under invisible weight. 2 months. Your mother and I spent 2 months selling everything we had left. Every nail, every piece of furniture, every tool. And you gave it away in one night. I swallowed hard. My anger was molten, but beneath it was something uglier. Envy. Envy that she could destroy and still expect forgiveness. envy that Mom might even now want to believe her excuses. Dad, I said carefully, I'll call the police. Let them trace the purchases, the cash transfers. Let them find Derek. We can prove everything. No! Christina shrieked, her face contorted in panic. Please don't. You'll ruin me. You'll ruin my life. You already ruined it yourself, I snapped. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Between hiccuped breaths, the truth spilled. Derek's gambling debts, threats he'd fed her, promises that he'd be different once the money bought him breathing room. He said he needed me, she whispered. If I didn't help, he said he'd... She broke off, biting her lip until it bled. Mom's hands shook as she knelt beside her. Oh, Christina, how could you believe him? How could I not? Christina shot back, eyes blazing again through tears. You've always told me family helps family. Derek was my family too. The silence after that was worse than shouting. Dinner that night was suffocating. Forks scraped plates in rhythmic accusation. Christina's eyes were swollen, her food untouched. I kept my gaze fixed on the mashed potatoes, though my hands trembled each time I lifted my fork. Finally, Dad set his cutlery down with a deliberate clink. Your mother and I have made a decision. His voice was calm now, terrifyingly calm. Christina looked up with raw hope. We will not demand repayment, he said slowly, but you will not return to college next semester. You will take a gap year. You will work. You will pay for your own tuition from now on. Not a cent will come from us. Her fork clattered to the plate. What? No, you can't be serious. You should have thought of that before you threw away $15,000, Dad replied, unmoving. But Dad, college is expensive. You'll find a way, like your sister did, like millions of others do. Her voice rose to a scream. That's not fair. Leda never had to deal with this kind of punishment. My chest tightened. Are you kidding me? I worked through college. I worked myself sick to make it. You've had everything handed to you, Christina. She glared at me like I'd stabbed her. You're happy, aren't you? You've been waiting for this, for me to fall. Her words stung, mostly because there was truth in them. Part of me was satisfied, sickly satisfied, to see her finally face something resembling consequence. Dad pushed his chair back, the sound final. This decision is not up for debate. Starting tomorrow, you will begin looking for work. End of discussion. Christina buried her face in her hands, sobbing like a child denied a toy. I sat frozen, torn between triumph and guilt, between the bitter taste of justice and the sour ache of seeing my sister crumble. That night, as the house settled into uneasy silence, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The shadows of tree branches scraped against the window, making patterns like claw marks across the plaster. I replayed everything, her lies, her tears, Dad's verdict. And underneath it all, I wondered if we'd truly seen the worst yet, or if this was only the first unraveling of a thread that had been weakening for years. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that thrummed with unsaid words, thick enough to choke on. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the old pipes, the tick of the hallway clock, the occasional muffled sob from Christina's room. I should have felt victorious. For once, Dad hadn't bent. For once, Mom hadn't rushed to soothe Christina's wounds. My sister was finally tasting the sharp edges of reality. Yet, instead of relief, I felt restless. Justice, when it arrived, was never as sweet as you imagined. A knock came at my door, soft, tentative, like a child who wasn't sure they were welcome. Leda? Her voice was small. I turned on my lamp. Christina's face peeked in, streaked with tears, mascara smudged into bruised shadows. She slipped inside, closing the door gently behind her. What do you want? My voice was flat. She stood in the middle of my room, arms wrapped around herself. I need to ask you something. I already knew. My stomach tightened. Could you lend me the $15,000? She whispered. I stared, then laughed, sharp and humorless. You can't be serious. I'll pay you back, she rushed on. I swear. As soon as I graduate and get a real job, I'll give you every penny. You know how important school is for me. Please, Leda, you're my sister. Her eyes were wide, desperate. Once, when we were children, those same eyes had begged me to share my toys, my clothes, my allowance. Back then, Mom would whisper, she's younger. She doesn't know better. Be the bigger person. Now the stakes were $15,000 and years of resentment. You stole from me, Christina, I said, my voice shaking. From Mom and Dad. And now you want me to cover it? Do you even hear yourself? Her lips trembled. I panicked. Derek. Stop. My anger surged. Don't say his name. Don't you dare bring him into this room like he's some excuse. He used you, Christina, and you let him. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Silence stretched. Finally, she whispered, "So that's it? You're just going to let me fail?" "You chose this," I said coldly. "You made your bed." She stood frozen, then turned and fled, the slam of her door echoing down the hall. I lay awake long after, memories crawling through me like ants. When I was 10, I'd saved coins in a piggy bank for a blue bicycle. One morning it was half empty. Christina had taken the money to buy glitter pens and stickers. Mom said, "She's little. She doesn't understand. Share with her." In high school, Christina borrowed my favorite dress for a party and returned it with a red wine stain. When I complained, Dad said, "She looks up to you. Don't make her feel bad." Even in college, I found $20 bills missing from my wallet during visits home. Mom sighed. She probably needed it for something important. Each time they told me to forgive. Each time I did. And now? 15,000 wasn't a mistake. It was a culmination. The next morning, Christina played a new role, remorseful daughter. She came downstairs in pajamas, hair unbrushed, voice soft. "I'm sorry about yesterday," she whispered, avoiding eye contact. "I know what I did was wrong. I promise I'll change. I'll never do anything like that again." Dad didn't even glance up from his coffee. "Sorry doesn't pay tuition." Her eyes filled with tears. "But I can't make enough money in a year. Please, can't we just—" "This conversation is over," he said firmly. She stormed upstairs, footsteps loud as gunfire. By noon, she was dragging suitcases down the steps, stuffing clothes into bags with deliberate drama. "Fine. If you don't want me here, I'll go live with people who actually care about me." She slammed the door behind her. For 24 hours, we heard nothing. Mom wandered the kitchen like a ghost, phone in hand, glancing at it every few minutes. Dad stayed quiet, but I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. Then the phone rang. It was Grandma. "Leda, what happened?" "Christina called me crying, saying you all kicked her out and ruined her future. She said you framed her with that money." I closed my eyes. "Grandma, please, let me put Dad on." He explained everything, his voice low but steady. When he finished, there was silence on the line. "Oh my goodness," Grandma whispered. "I had no idea. She made it sound like you were monsters. She even asked me for money." "She what?" Dad's voice cracked. "I told her I'd think about it, but after hearing this, no, absolutely not. I'll check my own things too. I don't trust her right now." Within days, the calls multiplied. Aunt Sarah, angry and confused. Uncle Mike, bewildered when Christina showed up at his door begging for cash. Cousin Jennifer, pressured to co-sign a student loan. Each time, Mom or Dad had to repeat the story. Each time, relatives recoiled in disbelief, then sympathy, then refusal. Christina's lies unraveled faster than she could spin them. But what shook me most was the text I saw flash on her abandoned tablet, left charging in the living room. "D. Babe, where's the rest? You promised more. Don't leave me hanging." A chill seeped into my bones. Derek wasn't finished with her. He would never be finished until he bled her dry. That night, Mom sat at the kitchen table, staring at the message on the screen. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "She's in deeper than we knew." I couldn't argue. The truth was worse than we imagined. Christina wasn't just reckless. She was tethered to someone who saw her as a wallet, not a person. And for the first time, I wondered if Dad's punishment, the gap year, the hard labor, wasn't enough. Maybe the real fight was just beginning. Christina came back 2 nights later. The door creaked open after midnight, and her silhouette hovered in the hallway like a guilty child sneaking cookies. Her luggage dragged behind her, the wheels scraping the floor. When Mom appeared at the top of the stairs, Christina froze. "I can't find anywhere else," she whispered. "Nobody wants me. Can I stay here?" Her voice cracked, and for the first time she didn't sound entitled. She sounded tired. Dad emerged from the bedroom, robe hanging open, face lined with exhaustion. "You can stay," he said flatly, "but there will be rules." The next morning, the kitchen turned into a courtroom. A yellow legal pad sat on the table, Dad's pen scratching as he wrote each condition. Christina sat hunched across from him, hair tangled, eyes rimmed red. I leaned against the counter, watching. "Rule 1, Dad said. You get a job, any job. You work until you can pay your tuition yourself." Christina opened her mouth, but Mom lifted a hand. "Don't argue." "Rule 2, Dad continued. No borrowing. Not from us, not from relatives, not from friends. You stand on your own." Christina's lip trembled. "What if—" "No what ifs," he cut in. He wrote down 8 rules in total. No asking for handouts, no using the family car unless approved, curfews, and most importantly, no contact with Derek. "This is ridiculous," she muttered under her breath. Dad slid the pad toward her. "Sign it. If you don't, the door's right there." Her hand shook as she picked up the pen. She signed. It felt like an accountability ritual, like binding herself to something bigger than excuses. For a few weeks, she tried to follow. She filled out applications at diners, retail shops, even a car wash. Every rejection chipped at her arrogance. I watched her come home with crumpled resumes, her eyes duller each day. Meanwhile, my own patience thinned. The air at home was heavy, as if one spark could ignite another explosion. Every time I saw her slump at the kitchen table, I fought the urge to remind her of the $15,000. Every time she sighed dramatically, I wanted to scream that I'd worked for everything she took for granted. So I did the only thing that felt like control. I moved out. I found a small, one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes away. The walls were thin, the faucet dripped, and the streetlights outside flickered like they were dying. But it was mine. I unpacked slowly, lining the shelves with books I'd once hidden in our shared house, planting a fern in the corner as a fragile promise to myself. I could keep something alive without anyone interfering. The first night alone, I sat cross-legged on the floor, eating cheap takeout from a plastic container, the silence pressing against me. It wasn't comfort, it was freedom. Mom called often after that. Updates about Christina slipped into every conversation. "She got a job at the diner downtown," Mom said one evening. "It's minimum wage, but it's something. Her feet are blistered, but she hasn't quit." Another time, "She comes home exhausted, Leda. I almost feel sorry for her." I bit my tongue. Almost. That word carried decades. But then Mom's tone shifted, lower, troubled. I overheard her on the phone. Derek again. He keeps asking her for money. My chest tightened. What did she say? She told him she doesn't have any. He didn't like that. I pictured Derek's smirk, the way his name alone made Christina's choices collapse. He was the kind of man who smelled weakness and fed on it. A week later, leaving my office late, I spotted her across the street. Christina, outside the diner in her stained apron, standing under the flickering neon sign. Beside her was Derek. His hands moved sharply as he talked, his voice too low for me to hear, but his body language loud with anger. Christina's shoulders hunched, shrinking. I stopped in the shadows, heart pounding. He leaned closer, gripping her arm. She jerked away, shaking her head. He spat something cruel, then stormed off, his figure swallowed by the night. Christina stood frozen, wiping her eyes quickly before anyone could see. Then she walked back inside. I stayed hidden, torn. I could have stepped out, confronted him, pulled her away. But I didn't. I let her walk back in alone, because I couldn't decide if rescuing her would save her or just reset the cycle. Later that night, lying in bed, the image haunted me. My sister, stubborn, spoiled Christina, looked small. Smaller than I'd ever seen her. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe the rules, the harshness, were the only lifeline left. But as I stared at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that Derek wasn't done. That the $15,000 wasn't the last price Christina, or any of us, would pay. 2 months into her new life as a waitress, Christina's hands told the truth her voice wouldn't. They were raw, reddened from soap and hot water, nails chipped and broken. She still painted on a smile when she walked through the door, but it never reached her eyes. Dad noticed before anyone else. One Sunday morning, he slid an envelope of her crumpled paychecks onto the table. "From now on," he said, "this isn't just money you hand us. It's going into a savings account." Christina blinked. "What kind of account?" "A locked one," Mom explained. "Every week, when you bring us your paycheck, we'll deposit it. You'll only keep your tips for daily expenses." Christina frowned. "So, I don't touch it?" "Not for 12 months, Dad confirmed. His voice was steady, almost ritualistic. "At the end of that year, you'll have a choice. Use it for tuition or give it to Derek. But if you choose him, you're out of this house permanently." The kitchen went still. Christina's mouth opened, then shut. I watched her carefully, waiting for denial, for the dramatic outburst. Instead, she only nodded, biting her lip. But her silence wasn't agreement, it was calculation. I knew that look. Later, when she thought no one was watching, she pulled out her cheap flip phone. Her thumb hovered before pressing the call button. I couldn't hear her words, but her face told me enough. Lips trembling, eyes darting, voice low with apology. Derek was still there, still pulling at her strings. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my new apartment, the hum of the fridge filling the silence, and thought about what Dad had done. He'd given her structure, but also temptation. A savings account wasn't just money, it was a test of loyalty, and Derek was the kind of man who never stopped asking. Weeks passed. Christina worked doubles, came home exhausted, collapsed at the kitchen table with her shoes half off. Mom fussed, setting plates of food in front of her, but Dad remained distant, a stone wall of consequences. One Saturday, I drove past the diner after visiting Mom. The neon buzzed against the dark sky, and there she was, Christina, slipping into the alley behind the building. A tall figure waited. Derek. My pulse spiked. I parked down the block and walked quietly toward the shadows. I couldn't hear everything, but fragments carried in the night air. Need it now. I told you I don't have any. You're lying. You've got a job. Where's the cash? It goes into the account. I can't touch it. Then find a way. His voice sharpened. If you really love me, you'll make it happen. My fists clenched. Christina shook her head, tears glinting in the streetlight. Please, Derek, not again. His hand shot out, gripping her arm. She winced. I stepped forward, then stopped. My breath fogged in the air, heavy with indecision. If I intervened, she'd hate me for humiliating her. If I stayed, she'd suffer alone. After a tense pause, Derek let her go with a curse and stormed off. Christina leaned against the wall, wiping her eyes, then dragged herself back inside. I stood rooted in the shadows, shaking with rage. Not just at Derek, at her, at myself, at this endless cycle of rescue and betrayal. The next day, Dad noticed the bruise on her arm. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Instead, he doubled down. From now on, he said at dinner, your paycheck comes straight to me. No detours, no delays. You'll hand it over the moment you get home. Christina bristled, but she obeyed. Each week, the ritual repeated. She placed the envelope in his hand. He recorded the amount, then locked it away. The numbers grew slowly, a few hundred, then more. By the fourth month, the account had nearly $4,000. But Derek wasn't silent. Late at night, I saw texts flash across her phone when she left it charging in the kitchen. Derek, come on, babe, just a little. I'll pay it back twice over. Derek, you wouldn't even have that job if it weren't for me. Don't forget that. Derek, if you love me, prove it. Each message was a chain, tightening around her. One Sunday afternoon, Dad gathered us again. He held the account statement in his hands, eyes scanning the numbers. You're doing well, he admitted. But remember, this is only the beginning. The choice still waits at the end. Christina's gaze flickered. And what if I don't want to go back to school? Then you'll keep working, Mom said firmly. But if you hand this money to Derek, we won't protect you again. Christina's eyes dropped to the table. She didn't answer. I couldn't help it. Do you even hear yourself? I asked her. You've got a second chance, and you're still thinking about him? Her cheeks flushed. You don't understand. You're right, I snapped. I don't understand throwing away everything for someone who sees you as a bank account. She pushed back her chair, storming upstairs. The slam of her door shook the walls. Mom exhaled shakily. She's not ready. Dad's eyes hardened. Then we'll make her ready. But in my gut, I wasn't sure any rule, any savings account, could compete with the kind of poison Derek poured into her ear. And though no one said it aloud, we all felt the same shadow. The 1-year countdown had begun. And none of us knew what Christina would choose when the clock finally struck 0. By the 8th month, Christina looked like a ghost of the girl who once strutted in designer boots. Her uniform was always wrinkled, her hair tied back in a plain ponytail, makeup forgotten. The sparkle she used to wear like armor had dulled. She rarely spoke at dinner anymore, except to mumble about work. My feet hurt, she'd say, or the customers were awful tonight. Dad never softened, though sometimes I caught him glancing at her when she wasn't looking, an unreadable mix of anger and worry. Then one evening, Mom picked up the house phone, her face tightening as she listened. When she hung up, she looked at Christina with sharp eyes. That was Derek. He's still calling here. He wants to talk to you. Christina froze, fork midair. I told him never to call again, Mom said firmly. You need to block him, Christina, for good. I already did, Christina whispered. He keeps finding ways. I almost believed her. But later, I saw her outside on the porch, her flip phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low, pleading. I couldn't hear the words, but the tension in her shoulders was enough. She was still tethered. A week later, she came home with swollen eyes. "It's over," she announced, collapsing into a chair. None of us moved. "I told Derek I can't give him money anymore," she said flatly. "He called me selfish, said I never loved him. Then he hung up." Her hands trembled as she gripped her knees. "So I blocked him, for real this time." We didn't cheer, didn't comfort. We just watched her, unsure if this was another performance. But days passed, and she didn't bring his name up again. 2 months later, her 21st birthday arrived. We gathered in the kitchen with a small cake Mom baked herself, vanilla frosting, swirled clumsily but warm with effort. When Christina blew out the candles, I slipped an envelope into her hands. Inside, 5 crisp $100 bills. She looked at me, stunned. "Leda, why?" "Because you're my sister," I said, though the words felt heavy on my tongue. Tears welled in her eyes. For a long moment, she stared at the cash. Then, slowly, she slid the envelope across the table to Dad. "Can you put this in the account too?" she asked. The room fell silent. Dad's eyebrows lifted. Mom's hand went to her mouth. I sat frozen, the floor tilting beneath me. "You're sure?" Dad asked. Christina nodded. "I want to save every penny I can. I need to prove I can do this." Something cracked in me then. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a fissure in the wall of resentment. After she left the room, Mom whispered, "Maybe she's changing." I didn't answer, but a quiet warmth settled in my chest, one I didn't trust but couldn't ignore. A few weeks later, I drove out to the country house where Mom and Dad had been working every weekend. They'd been repainting, repairing, reclaiming. When I pulled up, I found Mom sitting alone on the porch steps, paint-stained overalls streaked with sweat. Her face was turned toward the river, eyes glassy. "Mom?" I asked gently. She startled, wiping her cheeks quickly. "Oh, Leda, didn't hear you." I sat beside her, the wooden step creaking. "You were crying." She gave a brittle laugh. "This house, we sold so much from here, pieces of your grandparents, pieces of us. And all for what? To see it vanish into someone else's pocket." Her voice broke. I reached for her hand, the way she used to reach for mine when storms rattled the windows at night. "You didn't know it would end like that. You did it out of love." She squeezed my hand weakly. Sometimes love blinds more than it guides. For the first time, I saw how deeply the guilt lived in her. Not just for Christina's theft, but for years of excuses that had shaped her. That night, as I drove back to my apartment, the image of Mom weeping on the porch stayed with me. Responsibility wasn't just Christina's burden, it belonged to all of us. Months passed, each one carving small changes into Christina. She stopped wearing expensive brands. She learned to budget her tips, counting coins at the kitchen table. When she spoke about work, her voice carried both exhaustion and pride. One evening, she joined me on the porch, the air cool with early spring. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think money was just paper. Something Mom and Dad could always find more of. But now, every $20 bill feels like blood, like hours of standing, smiling, aching feet." I looked at her, and for once I didn't see arrogance. I saw recognition. She met my eyes. "I wish I could take it all back. The 15,000, the way I treated you, everything." "You can't," I said gently, "but you can make sure it never happens again." Her shoulders straightened. "I won't. I swear I won't." And as the fading light painted her face gold, I almost believed her. But even in moments of hope, shadows lingered. One evening, the house phone rang again. Dad answered, his voice clipped. "Who is this?" A pause, then his expression hardened. He slammed the receiver down. "Derek," he said simply. My stomach dropped. Christina paled, her lips trembling. "What did he want?" "He asked if you still had access to the savings account," Dad said coldly. Her eyes widened. "I didn't tell him—" "You didn't have to," Dad interrupted. "He knows you too well." The room went silent. In that silence, I realized the truth. Derek might be out of her life, but his shadow wasn't gone, and the test Dad had built, the one-year account, wasn't just about saving money anymore. It was about whether Christina could sever that shadow for good. Summer came slow, draped in long evenings and buzzing cicadas. By July, the country house had been transformed. Where dust once ruled, fresh paint gleamed. Where sagging couches had sat, new furniture made the rooms smell faintly of pine and varnish. It was no longer a graveyard of memories. It was alive again. Dad insisted we all spend a week there. "It's time," he said, in that voice that meant more than the words themselves. The first night, we cooked together. Mom humming softly, Dad slicing vegetables with a focus I hadn't seen in months. Christina set the table, her movements slower, less showy. No manicured nails tapping on plates, no designer rings glinting in the lamplight. Just my sister, tired but present. By the third evening, we sat on the porch watching the river. The sun melted into the horizon, painting the water orange and violet. Fireflies blinked lazily in the tall grass. You know, Christina began, voice hesitant, I never understood money before. $100 was just paper. But now, every time I see that number, I think, that's 2 days of aching feet, 2 days of smiling at customers who don't tip, 2 days of swallowing pride. Her eyes shone in the fading light. I keep thinking about the 15,000. How many hours Mom and Dad worked to save it. How I gave it away like it was nothing. Her voice cracked. It wasn't nothing, I said quietly. It was months of labor, sacrifices. And you didn't just take the money, Christina. You broke trust. I know. She buried her face in her hands. I'd do anything to take it back. You can't, I said gently, but you can choose differently now. She lifted her head, tears streaking her cheeks. I already did. I blocked him, Leda, for real. Derek called again last week, said he could make it right if I sent him just a little more. He even swore he'd wire the 10,000 back if I fronted him a few hundred. For a second, I almost believed him. But then I heard your voice in my head. I hung up. I blocked him. I let out a slow breath I didn't realize I was holding. That's good, I said. That's the first real step. Christina hesitated, then looked at me with raw vulnerability. Can I tell you something? After Dad told me I'd have to work, I hated you. I thought you were enjoying it, watching me fall apart. I wanted to blame you for everything, but now I see you were right. You worked for everything, and I... She broke off, shaking her head. I don't deserve your forgiveness. The words hung between us, heavy and real. I studied her face, no longer shielded by makeup or bravado. For the first time in years, she looked like the little sister I used to protect, not the spoiled one I resented. I'm not ready to forgive, I admitted. Not completely, but I'm proud of you for trying, and that matters more than you think. Her lips quivered into a tentative smile. Thank you. That means a lot. We sat in silence, the river flowing steady and endless, carrying away the weight of unspoken years. The rest of the week passed in fragile peace. We cooked, we laughed softly, we avoided old wounds. For once there were no slammed doors, no dramatic exits. But on the last night, Dad pulled an envelope from his pocket. It's been almost a year, he said, his voice solemn. The account is nearly full. Soon you'll decide, Christina. College, or... He didn't say Derek's name. He didn't have to. Christina swallowed hard. I know, and I promise, I'll choose right. Dad's eyes searched hers. This isn't about pleasing us anymore. It's about proving to yourself you've learned. I have, she whispered. I won't waste it again. Mom reached over, placing a hand on Christina's arm. We'll see, but this time it's your choice. No excuses. Later, alone in my room at the country house, I stared out at the river. The crickets hummed, the stars blinked faintly, and I thought about all that had unraveled in the past year. Christina had been reckless, deceitful, cruel. She had taken from us, lied to us, nearly destroyed us. But she had also stumbled toward repentance, step by painful step. And me? I had carried bitterness like armor. I had wanted to see her fall. Yet here I was, proud of her progress, even if forgiveness still felt far away. Maybe that was the real twist. Our family hadn't broken completely. We had bent, cracked, almost shattered. But somehow, in the mess, we had found a way to stitch ourselves back together. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but enough. As I closed my eyes, I remembered Dad's words. The choice still waits at the end. And for the first time, I believed Christina might actually make the right one. But the next morning, as we packed the car to leave the country house, a letter arrived in the mailbox, crisp and official. It was from the bank. Dad opened it, scanned the page, and frowned. Then he passed it to me. Account maturity date approaching. Funds will be available for withdrawal in 30 days. 30 days, 1 month. I glanced at Christina. Her face was unreadable, caught between fear and resolve. The countdown had begun.